Thank you guys for being here. It's such a pleasure to have another event at ANEW, this wonderful space that has so graciously uplifted so many of the social entrepreneurs that have big vision that can possibly scale globally, but let's start with statewide and right here in our city. So I want to introduce the event, which is a film screening called, it's a Beloved Birth film screening, 50 by 50. And today we're highlighting Arrest the Midwife. Our filmmaker is here today, Elaine Epstein, and very excited that we can bring more awareness to the issues that are very much a part of New York State, but also a lot of states are needing to improve legislation. So this is highlighting the personal stories around the issues. It shares the lived experiences of the families that are navigating the fact that we do not have CPM licensure in our state. It helps us understand how full CPM recognition is necessary right here in our state, and hopefully it will allow for our policy to change and our community members to be further engaged in how to change that policy. So I want to thank not only the space but also our partners. We have Birth Center Equity that helps sponsor this event. I've already mentioned ANEW, Push for Empowered Pregnancy that is rocking with the technology and making the virtual audience, thank you for being here, virtual audience, available to us to make it more accessible. And of course, March for Midwives, we're collecting stories so that these stories can be shared, and the stories are the source of what can change policy. So you'll be invited afterwards to participate in that. And Mobilize Maternal Health, which is another organization that is working really hard with a lot of maternal and infant health organizations to not only change this policy, but maternal and infant health policy statewide. Okay, and then finally, very importantly, want to give a nod to New York Certified Professional Midwives, an organization that's been giving so much power and energy towards hopefully changing this policy, and we just have to start with getting aware. So with that, let's start the film.
This new report found 36% of U.S. counties are maternity care deserts, places with no OBGYN doctors, hospitals providing obstetric care, birth centers, or certified nurse midwives. These figures have worsened over the past 2 years, with the number of maternity care deserts increasing to...
Oh, today is baby day. Working on number 3 for today, so full moon, you know. So okay. Hi.
Yes, this is Joe calling, and she wasn't sure if you were at home.
No. Well, you'll probably beat me down there.
Alrighty, probably be ready when we get there the way it looks.
Oh boy. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Shit. All right, they're
already inside. I'm here. Okay. Maybe I could just check and see what's going on real quick.
Water just broke. It's gonna come.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Breathe into that pressure. That's it. There you go. There, you got a little boy.
Thank God you came.
Then I learned about midwifery care, and I first learned about birth centers, and that was, so I'm like, okay, let me look for the birth centers, and there were none that were available, except if I went to New Jersey at the time. So I was like, well, that's, seems, just really unfortunate. And that's when I was introduced to home birth. I met someone who was from the Bronx, who was Dominican, and she shared her experience, and I was like, oh, and I thought my misconception about midwifery, that this was just something like kind of hippie, and just, I was like, it's not for me, that's just not, we don't do that, right? And so, but then I started learning and just seeing, and I was like, wow, this is so different. I met a couple midwives who gave me like 45 minutes. The first one, the second one, we met for an hour and a half. And this was just our consult. And I was like, I haven't spent more than 5 minutes with my OB, probably cumulatively. And I've been seeing him for like 7 months. And so that was the thing that probably stood out to me the most, was just like she got to know me. We sat in her car looking for parking in New York City. I mean, that is the impetus, right, of like New York living. And it was just instant connection, right? It was soul level connection. And that was so different. I mean, I don't think my OB could recognize me from the next person on the street, versus this midwife like held my hand, talked to me about my fears, my concerns, every question that I had. And I just didn't know that that type of care was even possible until I experienced it. And, obviously came back for more, because I was like, this is amazing. More people should know that this is a thing, right? And in that process have just reawakened this knowing that actually this is ancient medicine. This is actually the way that we've been doing this for so much time. And it is just recently that it's been erased, and we just kind of have to uncover. I think somebody mentioned that there's like a resurgence, right? And this is really that opportunity, right? How do we just let people know that this is pretty special, what's possible.
It's the best kept secret.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Sound okay? Great. Okay, so just to fill the virtual audience in what we've talked about so far, Elaine shared some of the impetus behind why she made the film, misconceptions that we've heard about midwives through the years. And now we're sharing some of our lived experiences on what we know about midwives. And also, maybe if someone wants to share the question that I just extended to Stephanie, if you happen to have an experience or know, because we don't know all of your backgrounds, if you've been cared for in a hospital and out of hospital, or you're familiar in that through your advocacy, through your work. Is anyone interested in chiming in on that? No pressure. And folks in the virtual audience, talk to each other. There will be a time where we'll intentionally include you. But yeah.
I can share. I've had experiences in all three settings. I have worked in the hospital setting as a labor and delivery nurse, and I have given birth in the hospital and at home with midwives, and I worked at a birthing center in New York. And I'm so grateful that I had that out of hospital experience first before going into the hospital and working in that environment, because there is just a fear that's there, that I think kind of just, I think the fear prevents women and families from even exploring these other options that are available to them. And I wish that people could see, kind of like we saw in the movie. I was thinking about the water birth that we saw. There's such a peace in the room when it's somewhere that you're comfortable and in a home-like environment, where you get to bring in a new family member. And I wish more people knew about that, and I wish more people could experience that for themselves.
Yeah, ditto to that. And I want to share that as a birth worker for 20 years and having supported over 600 families, I feel fortunate that I started my work in a home birth setting, assisting a midwife, that I witnessed a lot of that peace for several births in a row before I was exposed. And I was even at my siblings' birth in a hospital that had midwifery care. So I had a great foundation of witnessing respectful birth. Probably at least 10 births in before I started to see more challenging births, and had to thicken some skin around that, unfortunately, but still also fortunately, because it equips us to support our the families who are birthing in all the settings. So I just wanted to acknowledge that I noticed the difference between these care environments as more receptive to breath and peace and patience, and the ability to trust birth for a lot longer. And when someone is in that space of really trusting their body and feeling safe, their body is more responsive. And I noticed that sometimes in that space that you just described, where there's fear, regardless of where it is, sometimes people feel really awesomely safe in a hospital. But if there is fear, there's that feeling of tension in your body, your sphincters, your things are not as flow forward, So I just wanted to acknowledge that as part of my answer as well. But yeah, so my question to us, I'm going to say as advocates in the room, do we consider ourselves advocates? Yes, okay, I love it. So as advocates in the room, what outcomes or experiences do community birth, when we say community birth, we're referring to birth center birth and home birth, okay? What do we want policymakers to know and understand about community birth?
I would like policymakers to understand that the goal that they have is the same goal that we have as birth workers, and studies have shown that our way of, as midwives, of caring for people would get there faster to that goal.
Yes.
So I guess I would want those policymakers to think about why it's so difficult for us as midwives to get to that point where we could care for people when we have the same goal. So for me, is there's like a lack of understanding there, possibly, where they don't see that that it's been proven that we want people to go to the hospital and come back home.
Yeah.
And if that's what they want, they would see that we should get it going and allow midwives to actually care for people.
Allow midwives to actually care for people. I think when the midwife in the film was saying, dropping the stats, And like, you know, across the board, the midwife who's caring for me has so much better stats than what exists. And why can I not have this option? Elaine, were there moments, sorry, did anyone else want to add to that? Were there moments while you were in the process of filmmaking that surprised you about midwifery or the community that you were that you're sharing with us?
I think by the time I started making this film, I was pretty entrenched. Although, personal story, we, for our second child, and my wife carried our children. So we had approached Jo, whose beautiful book is sitting over there, and she was a midwife in a hospital setting. And that was, you know, we had a great experience the first time around, and so we were going to go do the same thing the second time around. And Jo had reached the point where she could no longer function. She felt like she couldn't function in that setting anymore. It just, she wasn't able to be the midwife that she wanted to be. And so she was like, I'm home birth, and if you want to continue with me, home birth it is. And that took a little bit of wrapping our head around. But my wife was pregnant when I filmed that birth scene, and she watched that scene. I came home with the footage, and she watched that scene, and that was the thing that convinced her to have a home birth.
Wow.
And then my son was born at home.
Wow.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So
I'm cognizant that we also have a guest that I want to hear from. And I'm really excited because we were just talking about policy and barriers. And one of the things that I'm aware of is that CPM licensure and birth center access can really change equity in maternal care across our entire state. And this is why we're here. This is part of why we're engaged in this discussion around this important film. And so I wanted to make sure to bring CPM's voices to the space. And as you know, we all know and love CPM. She's going to become a CPM. I wanted to go to the CPM license school route when I was interested in becoming a midwife decades ago, but I didn't. And meanwhile, there are CPMs who are born and raised right here in New York who are also experiencing their own stories. So we have three, one who is live in the mix and one or two who will read their 2-minute shares, okay? So I'm gonna extend this question to Carmen, and we'll put these in the box. And this question to Carmen is, how has lack of access to CPM licensure affected you personally or your community?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Can y'all hear me? I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me before I start talking. Okay, great. So thank you, Mila. Mila was actually my doula for my first birth. And I mentioned that, and I was thinking about like, how does this impact me? So today is my oldest daughter's 8th birthday. And why is that relevant outside of the fact that birthdays are a big deal to me? I was pregnant with her when NYCPM was in its formative stage. And so NYCPM and everything that's been going on, at least in recent history, has been trying to get licensure for about a decade. And for me personally, the impact of not being able to be licensed has been having to do everything but what I want to do in New York State. I went to Maternidad La Luz, which is a birth center, and MEEC accredited, MEEC being one of the accrediting bodies of Certified Professional Midwife education in El Paso, Texas. And so my parents are from the Dominican Republic. And so I went there intentionally to be able to serve Spanish-speaking community in New York City and in my life. And so when I came back from that training, I knew coming back to New York, I wasn't going to be able to practice. And I thought I could handle that. But the barrier that I couldn't like get past, where I was having people who knew I was a midwife asking me for help, asking me to be present at their births, asking me to do more for them, really started to like wear on me, and on my family. And the battle with licensure specifically was really like particularly like heartbreaking, because all of the CPMs that I was with and associated with in NYCPM, all we wanted was to serve our communities. There was no other ulterior motive. We wanted to be available for our communities. And what was particularly hard for me to witness was what was going on in upstate New York with the Mennonite community and the Amish community being completely stripped of their care providers, and seeing what Melissa Carmen and everyone else that was up there was going through. Like, we are being hunted and we are being prosecuted for just wanting to be the role that we've always had in our community. During the pandemic, I was able to use my skills and my knowledge at a birth center in New York City. And even though there was the executive order, I actually declined being able to practice in my full capacity, because my trust in New York State was that low, that even though there was this executive order, that I didn't feel like I would be protected. And I salute the midwives that did so, because of the sheer need that was necessary, that they had in their community. Chose to bow out of the policy licensure work, because it was so draining. It was just, why do we have to argue with the state of New York that people in rural communities and in New York City and across the state need access to more out of hospital professionals? Those of us that become certified professional midwives don't want become certified professional midwives because that is how we want to be educated. We want to work in collaboration with certified nurse midwives and certified midwives, so that we cover all the areas that are our areas of expertise. So I ended up leaving New York City, and I actually am now in the state of Virginia, where I can practice to my full scope. Right now, I currently am not in practice because I have young kids, and I love sleep, and I don't want to wake my kids up in the middle of the night right now at the age that they are. But I know that a couple of my fellow CPMs also left New York State, because while it is a worthy fight, it is a draining fight, especially because it's such a heart-led fight. It's not one of wanting to be competition with anybody. But what that means is that there's one less CPM in the Bronx. I got to attend one birth because I was able to be a birth assistant to a dear colleague who was a certified nurse midwife. And I think someone was sharing about having the midwife in the car while they were parking. That was like literally my experience, where I did a prenatal in a minivan with this client. I was working with the certified nurse midwife in New York, and I was checking on her, and I was with the Doppler under the tube train at Hunts Point, and just like the ability to meet someone where they're at and really hold them and be able to walk to their home and be able to be in walking distance of a community that really needed this type of care was an experience that I'll never forget. I know that family will never forget, and being able to support the midwife that I was with in that way will never forget. And so that's the blow, that there are midwives in New York, and I uplift the work of the midwives that are in the hospitals in New York and in the Bronx, but that there is no community midwife that can actually be in the community and walk around the community and be in attendance and be able to serve in the way that she should. So that's what I can share about my experience as a certified professional midwife in New York.
I want to give it up for Carmen, because one thing I do want to say about her being a Bronx midwife and one of the people who we lost, it's important that we keep our midwives right here in our state. She's been one of the most valuable people, and thankfully she's able to do some work from afar and contribute in different ways to the Bronx and New York City. And so we have a couple other midwives who have brief mentions. And so I want to recognize these are audience members reading for midwives, okay?
Hello, everyone. My name is Tanisha, and I'm reading Tisha's story. Hi, I'm Tisha, and I'm a certified professional midwife living and working in the Albany area and the greater capital region. I work in a home birth practice called Family Life Midwifery and partner with another CPM who also happens to be a licensed midwife in New York. I am very clear with all of our clients that although I am a CPM specifically trained in out of hospital birth and I'm a licensed midwife in Vermont, I can only assist the licensed midwife at home births. And I cannot work as a primary midwife in my community because New York does not recognize our hard-earned credential. What I cannot do in New York, though, I can easily do in Vermont. I can order labs, ultrasounds, or sign birth certificates. My partner handles all things that require the signature of licensed provider. What I say to my clients is this: I don't care what you call me, the second midwife, the birth assist, the doula, but just call me when you're in labor. With a license, we could increase our client base and expand our practice. I'm working hard as the VP of NYCPM and an organizer for our upcoming Day of Action to make licensure a reality for all. CPMs across the state, including myself. Families who choose to work with CPM should have that choice, and the criminalization of midwives needs to end.
And from Dana Hernandez, another midwife.
Hi, I'm Liza speaking on behalf of Dana. I received an AS in midwifery from Southwest Wisconsin Technical College, which is a Title IX community college. Because of that, I was not allowed to apprentice in New York State. I thus moved my family, my husband, and then 1-year-old to Puerto Rico and to attend home births with the midwives of Centro MAM. We were there for 11 months, needing to travel from my family home in Vieques, which is another island, every 2 weeks. To travel, we needed to pack the car, take it on the hour-long ferry ride to the main island of Puerto Rico, and then drive at least 1 hour to the San Juan Isla Verde area. For 5 months, we stayed at a friend's house, and when it became too much, we rented a house for 6 months on the main island. My second year, I returned to the US and did clinic with a wonderful preceptor in New Jersey who lived 2 to 3 hours away, depending on traffic. I spent 30 to 40 on tolls every time I went in for a clinic, day, or for a birth. When that became too much, I relocated by myself to New Hampshire. This is where I finished my clinical requirements at a high-paced and busy birth center. It was awful to be away from my son and husband for so long. Add to that, I was in New Hampshire during its coldest, darkest months, October to February. I did not see my family for Christmas. We spent about $1,000 for an Airbnb so that we can spend 5 days together for the new year. Since being licensed, I've had to consider how I would build and sustain a practice, considering that I would have to drive to New Jersey for that. This gave rise to Omni Birth Collective, where myself and 2 other midwives split being on call so that we could maintain a healthy work-life balance. It saddens me that I cannot serve the people in my community of the Lower East Side of Manhattan, where I was born and raised, know the families and resources.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I can attest that these are amazing midwives that we are missing right here in New York that has terrible stats, and we won't even get into that. But one thing we do know is a solution is access to these wonderful midwives and so many more. Do you want to share a tiny bit about geography and within New York State and how that impacts care?
So in New York, there's only a few schools that can license midwives, and they're all in New York City. So for anyone who does not live in New York City and our state, you can go to Buffalo 8 hours away, right? It is not practical to actually attend a school here in the city because we know how expensive it would be to try to live in New York City. And in addition, what the CPM route allows, it doesn't require a bachelor's degree. So in terms of point of entry, right, it is a much more accessible, it's a direct entry pathway. And that is one of the things that we want in our community. And so, you know, the fact that those schools, right, don't exist in other cities throughout New York has really disproportionately affected the folks in the rural communities, right, of New York, where, or it just, again, even just being upstate, it's just not really an option. And so that's something that, you know, we hope to change with this licensure, that we can make that more accessible, and that we remove some of these educational barriers that have really made this unjust for so many people.
And 2/3 of the counties in New York State don't have access to midwifery care. That we've heard 3 stories, and we all have more stories. And March for Midwives is a initiative that's going to collect many stories. I don't care how simple your story is. Share your story, and if you're willing, right upstairs you can record it with Lauren. Okay. Okay, when this ends, and this is going to be pretty soon. We're going to have a message from Jenny and a call to action for all of us. All right. Let's bring our voices. All right. So here's a message from Jenny to inspire us.
Thank you for standing in the gap for New York birthing and parenting families who are demanding change, because we don't have time to wait. Black women are dying, Indigenous women are dying, our babies are dying, and it's preventable. We know the solution. The research is clear. The evidence is in. Midwifery care saves lives. Community-based midwifery care saves lives. Yet we are blocked at every turn. Midwives, the very people trained to provide safe, effective, respectful care, are locked out of the system. Aspiring midwives, especially Black and Brown students who want to serve their own communities, are denied access to education, denied funding, denied licensure, denied the right to practice. It is unacceptable. New York, it's time. It's time to stop playing politics with people's lives. It's time to invest in models that work, models that ensure easy access, cultural safety, and real human dignity. It is time to eliminate the barriers that keep potential midwives from training and doing the work they are called to do. So I ask you, will you stand with us? Will you demand that midwifery education be made accessible and affordable? Will you demand that New York create pathways for community-based midwives to serve? Because when we lift up midwives, we lift up mothers, we lift up babies, we lift up families. This is about justice, this is about equity, this is about life. New York, let's go.
Yes, New York, let's go, let's go. Okay, so we just feel excited about the opportunity to take action, and one of the ways you can take action is joining Mobilize Maternal Health Coalition. Come to the Day of Action, celebrate International Day of the Midwife by defending and expanding access to midwifery. And if you don't already know, we want you to participate in
March for Midwives. Go to marchformidwives.com and share your stories so we can help move forward legislation. We have the data, but we want the stories to help move hearts.
Yes. Stay in touch, everyone. Thank you so much.